June is a massive month for recruiting with official visits happening all month long. But today we're going to focus on one of the most important positions on the field because here at Plant the Spear, we think offensive line is also one of the most important on the field, but that's quarterback, as Florida State is set to host all three of their top targets at the position in the month of June. So this is going to be huge. This is going to be massive in deciding the direction that you're going to go and really kind of what you're going to do with this class at that position because as you know, Florida State is still on the hunt for a 2026 quarterback commit after a decommitment earlier this year. So, what's up, Noel Nation? I'm Jesse from Plant the Spear, and thank you for joining me for this recruiting update. Now, we will be back again on Friday when Michael returns for a full show, but we got a lot going on in the quarterback recruiting right now. So, I just wanted to bring this quick one to you guys. Now, keep in mind the three names that we're going to talk about today: Keisean Henderson, Landon Duckworth, and Jaden O'Neal. These were two of your three first choices after Brady Smigel decommitted from your 2026 class, and they were also your first quarterback offers once Gus Malzahn was named as your OC. Now, one of the other three that were in the picture, Bo Bentley, has since moved out of the picture, eliminated FSU from his top schools. And in comes Jaden O'Neal, current Oklahoma commit. And we're going to talk about him later. So I first want to just do a couple of footnotes on the quarterback recruiting situation right now and these three targets. And I think the first and most important is any of these three would be a great fit for Florida State's new offense under Gus Malzahn. These are all dual threat guys who have good arms and legs that can hurt you. And so I think any one of these three would be considered a win for Florida State. Now, obviously, there is one that stands out above the rest for me personally. I think this is the number one for the staff and probably for you guys as well. But we'll talk about those in just one second. So these are likely going to be a long-term recruitment with any of these guys, right? Two of them are already committed to other schools, and one of them has two top schools that have already received a crystal ball prediction for him to land at. So, and the reason I say it's going to be long term also is because, yes, NIL is always going to be a factor in recruiting these days. It's just the nature of the game now, whether we like it or not. But you also have to get back to looking respectable on the field, and you also have to secure your job and remove that hot seat because if you're trying to get a big quarterback like a 5-star or a 4-star quarterback, they're not going to want to come play for a team if you were to back up 2-10 with a 4-8 season and possibly going to get fired. So you have to fix the on the field product too, but you also have to come with that attractive NIL package. But I think one of the things to mention about possibly landing one of these big time quarterbacks is, of course, not only would it be good for on field reasons. I mean, of course, Florida State has been, think of our most successful years with a Ward, a Winky, a Winston, and Jordan Travis there. Good quarterback play makes a huge difference, right? Even in a new offensive system that doesn't really require excellent quarterback play to be good, bad quarterback play is not going to help it. And that's something that happened at UCF last year. But I think on the flip side of that, the one thing that really stands out above all else with this is just it would be a massive win in recruiting for a coach in a program that kind of needs that right now. They need that perception boost. And I want to say that when you look back to last season or last year's class, 2025, look, it's not incapable. The staff is not incapable of performing some big time flips, right? You got Tylan Lee from Ole Miss on signing day, one of the biggest steals there. You did the things necessary to get Chroma from Georgia. That was a massive flip there. So it's, I know people are going to look at certain things around the staff and around this program right now and around the quarterback position, which we'll talk about that in a second. But at the same time, they have flipped some guys. And so if they could pull one of these off, this would be a massive win in recruiting. And not only would it be a win, but flipping a guy like, let's just say Keisean Henderson, 5-star quarterback, number 2 in that class, that's going to bring other recruits, right? Those guys are good, especially the offensive targets. Those guys are going to want to play alongside of him, right? And that's something that I hate to use this as an example, but if you look back to last year when DJ Lagway kind of burst on the scene at Florida, that really paid off for the Gators in the portal, right? They had a lot of guys that were like, hey, man, I want to come be a part of that. I want to jump onto that train. And so this could be a move that could help you do that. And that I say that because I think Florida State needs to really kind of go all in on getting one of these three, right? I like any of the three, but I really think you need to land with one of the three because I haven't heard any other names mentioned on the quarterback recruiting board. So it seems like these are your three eggs in your basket, and you really need to come out of here with one of these guys. But again, this could be something that draws on all the way to early signing day. Now, talking about quarterback recruiting and development, it has been a struggle under Mike Norvell. That is no secret. It's not something that was the case at Memphis. I really don't know what is going on here in Tallahassee with all the busts we've had at quarterbacks, the ones that have transferred out early and we never got anything from. It's really been Jordan Travis or bust so far. And I'm sure between that and last season, there has been a lot of negative recruiting against FSU for that. And landing one of these could help change that perspective. And I also think, if you were like, if you want to compare it to on the field results, flipping Henderson, O'Neal, or even landing Duckworth to me would be as big of a splash as like Florida State going out and winning 9 or 10 games on the field this year in the recruiting world. I think that would just be big. And that's why I think you do need to consider that the leader of your class, you may have to go in on, you may have to overpay for a little bit. And I know people don't love the idea of overpaying for high school recruits, and I don't either. I really don't. I don't like taking, say, the Miami approach. But at the same time, in the position that you're in, you kind of need to make a splash, and it's with a really important position on the field. This is also a position when you look at your quarterback room with Tommy Castellanos being gone after next year, then you're stuck with Brock Glenn. And I don't want to say stuck with Brock Glenn. We just haven't seen enough for me to be confident that he can be the guy that you need going forward. And maybe he takes that jump this year in a backup role. We'll have to wait and see. The good thing is Kevin Sperry burst onto the scene in the spring, and early returns were that they might have really hit on him, right? Just exceptional athleticism, kind of got some swag about him and a really good fit for the system. So I think Sperry might actually be in a position to be your starter next year. And if that were to chase Brock off, and the other kid that already, Trevor Jackson, already transferred out. So from quality standpoint, you're a little bit thin going into next year. And so this would be a guy that could compete in one of these guys could compete in year one, if not be ready to be your starter in year two. So I think, man, when you talk about that, this is going to be really big because it would be nice. Now, I know portal quarterbacks have been pretty successful. I mean, I think 6 out of the 12 of them in the playoffs last year were transfer quarterbacks. So that's not to say that you can't land a good transfer quarterback. But to get that kind of 4 and 5 star, that blue chip level quarterback with as high priority as they are in the portal, you're probably going to overpay for them as well. So maybe if it's something that you can do out of high school and keep and develop that guy under this new staff, maybe that's something that you can really, that would really put you in a good position going forward for the future at the position, right? And I think this is also where you want to see Gus pay off. Now, Gus's system has not always been friendly to quarterbacks, so that's a little bit of a tough sell. But it doesn't mean that he hasn't had success in the past. Obviously, Cam Newton is the first name that comes to mind. You had Jared Stidham, who played for him at Auburn there. Nick Marshall took him to a national championship. Not really a prototypical NFL style quarterback, but the style of quarterbacks in the NFL is changing in the last few years. So this could be something that you could also sell. Like, look at what these mobile guys are starting to do in the NFL there as well. But if for me, if I'm Gus, man, I'm walking into that living room or I'm greeting him with a Cam Newton jersey and my national championship ring from 2010 on, and I'm just going full on visor swag there to try and land one of these guys. But for me, I'm saying I think you need to drop a bag on one of these. I mean, you need to do everything else, win games and do all that stuff. But I think you probably need to really make a splash with one of these 4 guys. And, to be frank, yes, Houston is a Power 4 school now. They did transition into the Big 12. If we can't out NIL Houston, then we're in trouble, guys, right? We don't even need to be talking about competing against the Big Ten and the SEC of the world. So that's something to watch as well. Now, that doesn't mean they can't go all in. And I'm sure Houston probably has some money there, some oil money out of Texas or something like that. But you should be able to beat them out in an NIL thing. So let's talk about the names here, and then we'll talk about some dominoes and kind of where this thing could land. And first up is who I believe is the number 1 prospect on Florida State's board, would be my number 1 choice, as I'm sure most of you guys as well too. And if you're watching on YouTube, drop in the comments who you'd like to see Florida State land and if you think we have a chance at realistically landing one of these flips. But first up is Keisean Henderson, 5-star quarterback, currently, like we mentioned, committed to Houston, supposed to be on campus June the 9th through the 11th. 6'3", 185 pounds, number 2 quarterback in the 2026 class, number 3 recruit nationally, Elite 11 finalist. And one of the reasons he's so high nationally as well is because he really made his ascension as a versatile athlete that was expected to almost play both ways. I mean, he could really he could realistically be a blue chip wide receiver recruit if he wanted to. I mean, he was a 1,000-yard receiver in high school as a freshman. 2025 Navy All American Bowl MVP, junior season, 2,689 passing yards. 65.7% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns through the air, another 347 yards, and 7 touchdowns on the ground. This is really a do it all type of guy. He can run, he can pass, he has escapability. There's probably going to need to be a little bit of physical development there with a smaller frame at 185, 190. But he could be a guy, like I mentioned before, where he competes in year one or year two at the quarterback position. Now, he has started quarterback for the last 2 years for them in high school. There will be a 3-year starter by the time he enters college. And so, as great of a versatile athlete as he's been, he's really kind of honed his recruitment in as just being a quarterback recruit. And he's earned his way up with the top quarterback recruits in this class. Now, the hard part about pulling him is going to be Spring, Texas, his hometown, is only about 30 minutes from Houston, and he has been committed to the Cougars since May of 2024. So over a year already. And the interesting thing here is when I check 247's database, it does not look like Henderson has taken a single visit outside of a couple unofficials to Houston since he committed. And so it looks like this has been a pretty solid commitment. And so I think the fact that you were able to get him on campus, because other programs like Georgia, LSU, Auburn, I mean, it's not like they haven't been trying. They have tried to get him on campus, but Florida State is actually the first one to get him to do it. And I think that's really big. On 3 recruiting specialist Steve Wiltfong does think Florida State is the program to watch here, especially because they were able to get that visit set up. And a lot of that had to do with a good relationship with Tony Tokars. And I know that's a real love-hate relationship with this fan base. But man, if he could really help get this guy on campus and get him in the fold. And I also want to mention one other thing that I think might be worth mentioning. Jordan Travis, who recently retired from the NFL and hopefully ends up with a position on Florida State staff, was in Tallahassee for their elite camp just I think last weekend. So, when you talk about having Jordan Travis there to help sell the vision, he's definitely a guy that's bleeds garnet and gold. He loves the staff. He's going to preach the good stuff about the staff. And as tough as quarterback recruiting has been, keep in mind, they get a lot of credit for what they did with Jordan Travis. He wanted to quit football there. So maybe having Jordan around the program could be something that could also pay off as well. And so that's big there to watch with Keisean Henderson, getting him on campus coming up. Now, the next one we're going to talk about here is Landon Duckworth, a 4-star quarterback, 6'3", 195, number 6 quarterback in the 2026 class, number 50 recruit nationally in the 247 composite, Elite 11 finalist as well. Now, he is currently uncommitted here, but at the same time, he does have 2 crystal balls in for him to land. 2 of them, well, actually has 4. 2 of them to land with South Carolina and 2 of them to land with Ole Miss, but none for FSU. So the thing about Duckworth's commitment is when he was first placed on the board, when we went to this Gus Malzahn style offense, this is one we felt really good about, right? Because he was a UCF lean while Gus was still there. The rumor is that he was almost committed. But at the same time, once Gus left, that kind of distanced itself. But I was maybe thinking under the impression that, okay, well, if he was a lean while he was there at UCF and UCF wasn't necessarily great, and now you have the Florida State logo backing him, you might feel good about this, right? But I don't know if that's going to be the case. Now, he was previously committed to South Carolina in August of 2023, but decommitted in June of 2024. Now, he's supposed to be on campus in Tallahassee June 13th through the 15th, but he does also have a visit set up to Columbia right before FSU. So that will be something to watch. I'm sure they're going to be pushing for a commitment there as well. He is a dangerous dual threat quarterback. Passing is very solid, but his legs are what really make him special. 3-year starter with a 33-5 record entering his senior year. Now, obviously, you got to mention that he is a proven winner, which is huge, and I think that's a big thing, right? But the level of competition can vary widely in high school. He is out of Jackson, Alabama. So there's not really a whole lot of home field advantage there. You're still pretty close there. But I don't know the level of competition there in Jackson, but man, there's just something to be said about a proven winner because it usually carries over into college. Now, his stats are something to behold, right? 3,439 yards last year passing as a junior, 66.7% completion percentage, 39 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, but 648 yards and 12 touchdowns on the ground. He averaged 10.5 yards per carry. I will take that all 7 days a week and twice on Sunday, or whatever they want to say, however that saying goes. I think this will be a great addition, right? And I will say that, kind of with the uncertainty between those two programs, there is room for Florida State to insert themselves into this recruitment. Now, the last name we're going to talk about here is a late addition to the quarterback recruiting board, and that was after we saw Bo Bentley exit. And that is current Oklahoma commit Jaden O'Neal, four-star quarterback out of Mustang, Oklahoma. I believe he did just move to Oklahoma from California this year to play high school there in Oklahoma. High school football there. Supposed to be on campus June 15th through the 17th. He is listed as a 3-star on the just plain 247 rankings, but in the composite, which is what I prefer to use, he is a 4-star. Little bit bigger frame here, 6'3", 215, number 18 quarterback in the 2026 class, number 205 recruit nationally. Been an OU commit for about a year now, since June of 2024. Really nice pure passer with good size and a strong arm. He also did compete in the Elite 11 and looked really good there. Scouting report says that he could improve his escapability a little bit. And I did find some stats. I couldn't find 2024. I don't know if that had anything to do with the transfer, but in 2023, as a sophomore, he threw for 2,475 yards with a 61% completion percentage, 27 touchdowns, 162, and 3 touchdowns on the ground. So still a very good player here. And that was as a sophomore. So I think with, again, any one of these three guys are going to be a good land for Florida State. I think Henderson is the one you're looking at as your number one. But typically with quarterback recruiting, a lot of it depends on how the dominoes fall, right? And as we mentioned before, none of these would have even been in place had you have kept Smigel committed to the 2026 class. But with the changing of the guard, with the changing of the systems, those are things that, whether you believe it or not, that Luke Kromenhawk and he both sided the style of play there. You had to go in a different direction. So again, it's all about how these kind of dominoes fall. Now, let's get into kind of some of the scenarios where I can see these things happening. And let's start with Keisean Henderson. Tony Tokars, as I mentioned, has built a solid relationship. That's going to help you throughout this recruitment. He was actually supposed to camp with Florida State in the past, but when Smigel committed, that derailed the trip. This seems to be the top name on Florida State's list and the most gettable as it pertains to the level of competition. Because remember, what I talked about before with Houston, like, yes, Houston is a Power 4 program now, but you should be able to out NIL Houston unless they just absolutely go in and pay crazy amounts for this one player because it looks good for them to land a 5-star, right? But you should be able to compete with them from an NIL standpoint. Obviously, Florida State, is a bigger name program with bigger cachet. But I think the one thing there is you're going to have to improve yourself on the field as well. Because if he's been a long time commit to Houston, this is probably going to be one that goes the distance in this recruitment, right? I don't expect you to just flip him in June, although it would be great. I think you're going to want to prove to him that you're kind of back on the field and you're going to be around for a while. But again, Houston has been 4-8 each of the past 2 seasons. So it's not exactly like you're competing with a top tier program to get him. They haven't won much on the field either. And if things go bad for Houston again this year, yes, they were transitioning to Power 4, but if they have another losing season, then that could really kind of help grease the wheels to make this move. And again, getting him on campus when, some of the bigger names like Georgia, LSU, and Auburn could not, I think that is huge for Florida State. And I do know some people will be like, okay, well, maybe it's just for money. You go visit, maybe you can squeeze Houston out of a few more dollars. Look, let's be honest. And I'm sorry to say this, guys, it's just the truth of the matter. I don't think if you're trying to raise your asking price, you're going to visit a program that went 2-10 last year. Like, yeah, they might be desperate to pay a little bit, but don't you think going and leveraging yourself with Georgia, LSU, and I'm not even going to include Auburn in that, but Georgia, don't you think you would go leverage that to get money? So I think there's genuine interest here, and this recruitment could be interesting. Now, I'm not going to paint everything like sunshine and unicorns and all that stuff and act like Florida State's just going to go snatch any recruit that they want. That's not the case. You have to handle some things on your side of the street too. But I do think there is realistic traction in this recruitment. Now, when we talk about Duckworth, again, like I mentioned, this was one you felt really good for at the start, being a former UCF lean when Gus was there, now backed by the FSU logo. However, it does seem like Ole Miss and South Carolina are your two favorites for him with crystal balls for each program. One of the biggest obstacles I think here is you're going to have to compete against SEC programs with an SEC budget. Now, these are not top tier SEC programs, but as we know, the ACC is still a little bit of a hindrance, right? You still have to go up against the allure of playing in the SEC because whether we buy into it or not, and I personally don't, the ESPN propaganda machine has really kind of pushed that playing in the SEC as being something huge. And so you have to compete against that, right? But like I mentioned, with two crystal balls in for two different programs, there's uncertainty in this recruitment, and you do have the in of the familiarity there with Gus Malzahn. So hopefully that is something that means you can kind of wiggle yourself into this recruitment and make an impression and then get him back on campus for one of the games in the fall, which is another thing that I think is big with Henderson that I forgot to mention. Houston being a powerful program is great for them and everything, but if Florida State is at its peak, if Doak is at full throat, a night game, and you get him back on campus for say like Miami at night or something like that. That's just that's not an environment that you can recreate in Houston. Now, South Carolina and Ole Miss maybe so, but that's an advantage there over Houston for the Henderson recruitment as well. Now, lastly, with O'Neill, this one feels more like an actual domino situation regarding Oklahoma's 2026 quarterback recruiting. The Sooners are currently battling LSU for Bo Bentley's services, the one that we had on the board initially that is no longer on the board. Now, if Oklahoma was to beat out LSU for Bo Bentley, that could mean O'Neill is back on the market looking for a new home. And with a good visit in June, Florida State could be the top landing spot if that were to be the case. Now, if LSU were to win out that recruitment for Bo Bentley, Jaden O'Neill may not even become available. And if you feel good about one of the first two quarterbacks we talked about, maybe you're just kicking the tires on him for right now. Okay. Kind of keeping that warm on the back burner. But again, to wrap this episode up, guys, recruiting is very dynamic and uncertain these days, right? Committed doesn't mean what it used to. And being able to hold on to these commitments for the long haul until signing day is half the battle. So I wouldn't put too much stock into anybody being committed anywhere. But right now, you're just trying to make those inroads in the summer, right? You want to get in a good position with these guys to try and get them back on campus in the fall, and then to try and get that commitment in the fall into early signing day. So it's going to be huge, man. It's going to be one to watch as you get all three of your top targets on campus in June for official visits. And it's going to, this could really set the foundation for the direction you go if you feel like you're in a good position with one of these guys. Also depends on, does Landon Duckworth commit to USC while he's there? We'll see. But man, you really need to make a good impression here, especially considering you don't have a 2026 quarterback right now. So I think it is whichever one of the three you end up getting, I think you got to get one of the three. I think that's the most important, no matter who it is. Personally, I'm choosing Henderson. If I had my choice, let me know who you guys would choose. But man, I just think landing one of these guys, flipping a 5-star quarterback, even if it is from Houston, would be massive for the perception of this program at a time that it really needs it the most, right? So that's going to do it, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, drop a like and subscribe, rate and review on the podcast to help us reach other Noel fans. We appreciate you watching. Come back on Friday as Michael will be back with me, and we are going to talk more FSU football. If you're watching this before the Super Regional took place, we do have a video previewing the Corvallis Super Regional, Florida State against Oregon State. And always check out our website at plantthespear.com. Catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. As always, go Noles.